So what happens when a marriage, the very foundation of a life together, is built on a complete lie? Back in 1998, one woman's story of absolute deception forced the Indian legal system to ask a really tough question. When a marriage isn't legally real, are a woman's rights real? Today, we're diving deep into the landmark case of Abbayolla versus Padmamma.
At its heart, this whole thing boils down to a powerful human question. I mean, just imagine it. You build a life with someone, you pour everything into it, only to discover your marriage was never even valid in the eyes of the law. What happens then? Does the system just leave you high and dry? Let's find out.
All right, let's get into the story. To really understand this case, you have to understand the woman at the center of it all, Padmamma.
So, picture this. It's July 1984. Padmamma marries Abbayolla Subba Reddy in a traditional Hindu ceremony. But her new life, well, it pretty much unraveled immediately. She makes a shocking discovery. He's already married. He has a wife and 2 daughters. Within a year, the relationship completely soured, and after suffering terrible treatment, she was literally driven out of her home. With nowhere else to go, she did the only thing she could. She sought justice in the courts.
And make no mistake, this wasn't some accident. The deception was deliberate. Abbayolla actively hid his first family from her. And get this, Padmamma only found out the truth after the marriage had already been consummated. Her legal claim wasn't for a fortune. It was simple and frankly desperate. Just 1,000 rupees a month to survive and to get her personal jewelry back.
So Padmamma's personal tragedy created this huge legal mess. To even begin to decide her case, the court had to answer a really fundamental question. In the eyes of Indian law, who exactly qualifies as a Hindu wife?
Now, before we jump into the arguments, there's a key legal term you've got to know: void ab initio. It's Latin, and it means invalid from the outset. See, under the Hindu Marriage Act, if you get married while you still have a living spouse, that second marriage isn't just illegal, it's treated as if it never ever happened. This was the entire foundation of the husband's defense. So the battle lines were drawn. The husband's argument was, well, it was brutally simple. He basically said, the marriage was void, meaning she was never legally my wife, so I owe her nothing. But Padmamma's side argued that the law should be more flexible. They pointed out that she went through the ceremony in good faith. She believed she was his wife. Surely that should count for something, especially since the law itself has a provision for when a husband has another wife living.
So, how did the court rule back in 1998? Well, the Andhra Pradesh High Court came down with a very strict, by-the-book judgment. They decided to prioritize one thing above everything else: the government's intention to enforce monogamy. The court's logic was almost robotic. First, because of the first wife, the marriage to Padmamma was legally non-existent. Second, they decided that the term Hindu wife in the Maintenance Act could only mean a lawfully wedded wife, and since her marriage was void, no rights could come from it. Now here's the kicker. The court believed that giving Padmamma maintenance would be like rewarding bigamy, which would completely undermine the law they were supposed to be upholding. For them, the principle was way more important than the person.
So this 1998 judgment set a really harsh precedent with 2 crystal clear rules. Number 1, no maintenance for women in void marriages, period. And number 2, you can't use one law to ask for a solution that's supposed to come from another. For decades, this was the law of the land.
For Padmamma, sadly, this was the end of the line. But her story wasn't really over. It had planted a seed of doubt, a seed that would eventually grow into a complete transformation of the law.
For more than 20 years, that Abbayolla ruling stood firm. It left so many women just like Padmamma with absolutely no legal options. But outside the courtroom, the conversation around justice and a woman's rights, well, it was getting a whole lot louder.
And then, decades later, in a case called Sukhdev Singh versus Sukhbir Kaur, the Supreme Court of India took up this exact issue once again. The entire legal landscape was about to change forever. And the result was nothing short of a legal earthquake. In a stunning reversal, the Supreme Court declared that yes, a spouse in a void marriage is entitled to seek maintenance. The first and most rigid rule from that 1998 Abbayolla case was officially thrown out.
So what does this complete 180 mean for us today? Let's break down the lasting legacy of this decades-long legal battle.
The change is just stark. Where maintenance was once absolutely not allowed, it's now allowed. And that rule about not mixing laws? It's more flexible now, but with a new rule to keep things fair. Courts have to make adjustments to ensure no one is double-dipping or getting compensated twice for the same thing.
So why should you care about this?
Well, it shows that our laws aren't just stuck in the past. The judicial system evolved from a super rigid black and white interpretation to one that's focused on actual fairness and protecting people who are vulnerable. Today, the system is designed to provide support while making sure everything is equitable. In fact, anyone filing for maintenance now has a duty to tell the court about any other support they're already receiving, which makes the whole process way more transparent.
So in the end, the story of Abbayolla versus Padmamma started with one woman's heartbreaking quest for justice. Padmamma herself never got the financial support she was fighting for, but her fight, her struggle, it sparked a debate that, a quarter-century later, completely reshaped the meaning of justice for countless others. It's just a powerful reminder that the law isn't a static book of rules, it's a living thing, constantly being refined by the human stories that dare to test its limits.